Hey guys, how's it going? CoreData here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're doing something a little bit special as 1939 has once again reached out and asked if I would be interested in doing a card reveal. Naturally, I said yes. So today we are taking a look at 3 brand new cards from the upcoming expansion, which is Oceania Storm, which releases on June 11th. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 of the lower rarity cards coming out of US this expansion, primarily focusing on forecasting and weather synergy. As always, big shout out to Bear and the team at 1939 for letting me showcase some of the upcoming cards. It's always a pleasure getting to reveal some of the new upcoming stuff from the newest expansions. But without further ado, let's talk about some of the new cards. So first up, we have the Duck, which is a 1 credit, 1 operation, 1/2 fighter. Gets +1/+1, and you forecast when you move it into the front line. So very quickly, before I talk about the Duck, I am going to very quickly break down forecast. So the way forecast works is when you trigger a forecast effect, you will be presented with 3 options, 3 weather options. You'll be given the choice of either developing a sun card, a rain card, or a storm card. Once you've chosen which weather to develop, you will then be shown 3 weathers of that type, 1 at 2k, 1 at 4k, and 1 at 6k. This essentially represents various intensities of weather. So 2 is like low, 4 is medium, and 6 is high intensity weather. Each intensity has 3 variations for a total of 9 variations within each weather. So there's 9 total sun cards, 9 total rain cards, and 9 total storm cards. Each weather does its own like kind of specific thing. Sun kind of focuses on aggro effects like buffing units on board. Rain is like slower control effects, and storm is like burn and like dealing damage to units, that type of deal. So with that in mind, let's talk about the Duck. So it is a 1 credit, 1 op, 1/2 fighter, which is already like not bad. US typically really has wanted a cheap fighter to go alongside the Brewster stuff, particularly with how much fighter synergy there is in the nation at the moment with things like Carrier Cover and the Coronado. So having a cheap 1 credit aircraft that you can just run out on turn 1 that has like value upside is quite nice, particularly when it synergizes with a lot of the effects that you are intending to run in a Brewster deck anyway. I've been a big proponent of cards such as like the F4 Wildcat that you have to push to the front line to get value out of, and I think the Duck is in roughly the same vein, that it's worth running in your air deck, particularly with Carrier Cover, because you can just play. You can run out like 2 Ducks on turn 3 and Carrier Cover to push them at the same time, and then you get to forecast 2 cards. So yeah, I think the Duck is actually like not bad. I would not be surprised if this made its way into this bit like Brewster's at a minimum. But given we haven't seen much of the set as a whole, there may be more synergies for US Air to start running like a small forecast package. But the Duck is a very, very interesting card. I think it, at least on the surface, it reads very, very good to me. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm not, who knows? We won't really know until we see the rest of the set, or until we see the rest of the weathers. But it makes a lot of sense to me that this is most likely going to make its way into something like Brewster's, for example. But yeah, overall, the Duck seems like a solid build around, or like a solid bread and butter card for like US Air or US Forecast, if Forecast becomes a deck of its own. As we move on to the next card, which is the US Weather Bureau. It is a 2 credit order, choose 1, forecast, or draw a card. Again, this is very, very interesting. Another cheap forecast option. Just having value generation on cheap orders or cheap units is pretty powerful. Just being able to run them out, or like being able to cycle them off quickly, while also adding a relatively or potentially high impact card to your hand, such as like, for example, the 6 credit Monsoon that was revealed, is pretty good. But if you're in a situation where you need an answer from your own deck, you can cash this in for a draw at a potential like strat bombing or whatever, if that's your out in any given board state. So this is just a nice synergy piece for forecast. And when you don't need the forecast, or you need like an immediate answer from your own deck, the ability to cycle this off is also pretty valuable. Again, just another bread and butter card for forecasting. I would imagine if we start seeing like slower forecast decks, that this most likely makes its way into them. Just again, because it is a cheap forecast which means it's a very cheap piece of value generation if you want it, or it's a little bit of cheap cycle if you're against aggro and you need to find specific anti-aggro tools from your own deck, rather than relying on the slightly more randomly generated options of the weathers. So yeah, overall, interesting card. I think it most likely will see a little play if slower forecast is in fact a thing. Again, we don't know that much right now from the rest of the set, so we'll have to see how things shake out. But again, on the surface, a super interesting card, even if it is just a relatively plain standard. And finally, the last card I want to talk about today that I have for you guys is the 6th Marine Regiment. It is a 3-cost, 2-up, 4/5 with the effect that it has Blitz and 0-up if a Sunny or Rain card was played this turn. Now, this is a very interesting card. A 3-cost, 4/5 is already massively overstated compared to a lot of other units in the game. The fact that this has the potential to be a 3-cost, 4/5 Blitz with 0-up is very interesting to me, particularly because the two weathers it synergizes with. Sun is like I mentioned, the aggressive weather. This is what you want if you're playing a slightly faster or slightly more tempo-based deck. You want to be going for Sun, which means that this is going to be potentially playable in a Sun-focused aggro deck of some form. But also it synergizes with Rain, which which on the surface seems to be a much slower, more control-focused weather, which means you can play this in a slower control deck as a very cheap piece of, like, a very cheap interactive body, which again is very interesting. We've seen one of the Rain weathers we've seen is the 2-credit Deluge that distributes 6 health among friendly targets. So playing Deluge into playing your 6th Marines, like if you have an empty board, you play Deluge, you heal 6, you play your 6th Marines, they have Blitz and 0-up, and you immediately trade out like a reasonable sized threat in the front line. It just seems pretty solid. And again, like we've seen some of the more aggressive weathers from Sun as well, like giving things +3/+3, or giving your units +2 and air units +3. So this has a lot of potential output on both ends of the spectrum. And it would be remiss of me to not mention the fact that it's got 4 attack, so it does trigger a lot of the 4 attack meta stuff that came out in Blood and Iron. They're also going to be in the form for another 3 months, or like another 6 months rather. So maybe we see some kind of like mid-range deck wants this, like maybe a mid-range deck wants this, maybe an aggro deck wants this, maybe a like slower controlling US weather deck wants this. It's just a very, very interesting card. Has the potential to fit into a lot of varying archetypes depending on how good various forms of forecast are. So yeah, I think this is likely going to see a little bit of play somewhere. I'd be shocked if it didn't, given the rate and given the fact that it has synergy with like the two weathers on the opposite ends of the spectrum. So yeah, super interesting card. But unfortunately, that is all the reveals I have for you today. Hopefully you are as excited for forecast as I am. It seems like a really interesting mechanic to me, and I also really like how we're getting units that synergize with very specific weather conditions. So I'm excited to see how this all plays out in practice. But I digress. A big shout out to Bear and the team at 939 once again for letting me reveal cards. It is always an honor to be able to show off some of the new stuff that is coming out. But all that aside, the set comes out on June 11th. I will be posting most likely some kind of set review at some point closer to the release. And there are obviously gameplays and stuff afterwards. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.